It all kicks off with a massive army gathered on the plains, flexing an absolutely insane amount of military power. At the top of a giant staircase, the troops are just chilling, waiting for their leader's orders. The celestial demon kicks back in his chair with a posture that screams pure MC energy and superiority. Taking it all in, one of his subordinates hypes up how spectacular the whole view is. With that, he glazes the troops' loyalty as they bow down before their boss's sheer greatness. Full of reverence, the guy claims the sect has touched the heavens, and soon everyone will be on their knees. Agreeing without a second thought, the celestial demon Wijichin guarantees that's exactly how it's gonna go down. Then the servant hesitates a bit and asks for permission to clear up a little doubt, getting the green light to speak. Curious, he points at the troops' gear and asks about the incredibly expensive weapons they're rocking. After all, every single soldier out there is holding top-tier spears and wearing ultra-premium armor. The guy points out that their finances have been completely dry for ages, so he's super confused about where all this cash came from. Sipping his drink like an absolute boss, Wijichin drops the bomb. Someone gave them a loan. Instantly, the servant is totally shook by this wild plot twist. Mind completely blown, he tries to wrap his head around the idea that some crazy dude actually fronted them that much cash. He quickly points out that nobody in their right mind would fund the cult, since there's zero chance that money is ever getting paid back. Thinking on his feet, the underling comes up with the only logical explanation for this mystery. He claps his hands together, feeling like he finally cracked his leader's 4D chess move. Hyped up, he figures the banks just handed over the funds voluntarily out of sheer terror of the celestial demon's ridiculous power. Full of admiration, he praises the genius move of draining their enemies dry without spilling a single drop of ketchup. But Wijichin looks pretty annoyed by the guess and asks what kind of absolute lunatic would just hand them free money. Clicking his tongue, he stands up irritated, making it crystal clear that he isn't some cheap thug who just goes around robbing people. Right after, he starts digging through his own robes looking for an important document. He pulls out a piece of paper from his cloak, leaving his servant incredibly confused. The leader explains that a super polite guy named Manager Kim offered them a sweet deal with a low interest rate. Completely flabbergasted, the servant refuses to believe they got a whole fortune based on that tiny little contract. Looking closer, he spots a special conditions clause written in bold red ink. The fine print states that in case of default, the debtor's internal energy would be confiscated, which leaves him scratching his head. Panicking a bit, he reads the part about swiping energy out loud and realizes the payment deadline is literally today. Meanwhile, the master keeps a completely unbothered, stone-cold expression about the whole thing. Trying to chill out, the subordinate guesses the arrogant clause is just a formality, since pretty soon all the gold in the world will be theirs anyway. Getting his hype back, he smiles, completely relieved, claiming that expiration date means absolutely nothing. Totally agreeing, Wijichin plans to toss Manager Kim a fat stack of gold as a reward once they win the war. Once again, the servant goes back to kissing up to his boss, praising him as the true god of the heavens. Riding the hype train, the leader lets out a monstrous villain laugh that echoes all the way through the mountains. Right after, he draws his sword from its sheath with pure confidence, getting ready to drop the final order. Raising the blade to the sky, he strikes an intimidating pose right in front of his vast army. The weapon glows intensely as the warrior proudly declares himself the literal incarnation of heaven. Full of ambition, he orders them to loot and toast everything, because starting today they own the plains. Pointing his sword at the horizon, the celestial demon commands the troops to march immediately. Instantly, the warriors punch their palms in a universal sign of absolute respect. The subordinates bow their heads, accepting the highly destructive mission with zero questions asked. With the order out there, an explosion of aura and power literally shakes the ground beneath the master's feet. Every single soldier raises their weapon, roaring with hype for the brutal beatdown that's about to happen. With that, the sea of armed warriors finally starts marching toward the battlefield. The heavy sound of boots stomping the dirt marks the start of an unstoppable invasion. From the top of the stairs, Wijichin watches his army head out with the posture of an undefeated champ. Super satisfied with the view, he lets out a little grunt packed with pure arrogance and confidence. Feeling like the hard work is done, he sits back down in his chair to take a well-deserved break. Grabbing his cup again, he takes a generous gulp to celebrate his victory way ahead of time. Taking a deep breath, the guy exhales peacefully, just enjoying the quiet vibe of the camp. Totally zen, he comments to himself about how smoothly that drink is going down. But out of nowhere, a sudden greeting calling him a valued customer makes the leader do a massive spit take. Startled, he jumps out of his chair instantly and whips around, demanding to know who had the guts to sneak up on him. To his surprise, there's a mysterious dude standing there looking fresh to death with a calm smile on his face. Right next to the guy, a sharp-eyed young woman tags along for this extremely weird visit right in the middle of enemy territory. The duo just stands there, giving off a chilled professional vibe that totally clashes with the whole war aesthetic. Shook to his core, Wijichin checks out the intruder's face and realizes it's the exact same guy who loaned him that fortune. Sweating bullets, he squints hard, his gut telling him something is incredibly wrong with this picture. Trying to process the sheer absurdity of the break-in, he stutters in his own head, unable to string a full sentence together. After all, the warrior is absolutely baffled that he didn't sense this duo sneaking up behind him at all. Being the absolute master and supposedly the strongest dude on Earth, Wijichin's senses should easily pick up a single leaf dropping. Breaking the awkward silence, the guy apologizes for the jump scare and introduces himself as Manager Kim from the Continental Bank. Keeping it super friendly, he politely reminds the boss that they had already met back when the loan was approved. Faced with all those manners, the sect leader just glares at the intruder, frowning and highly suspicious. Despite the friendly tone, the celestial demon's survival instincts are screaming that the dude in front of him is a walking hazard. An overwhelming sense of extreme danger completely takes over the veteran warrior's mind. Playing it safe, Wijichin drops the pleasantries and straight up asks what kind of monster this manager actually is. Never losing that customer service smile, the outsider opens his arms and calmly repeats that he's just a bank employee. Then Kim pulls out a thick ledger, making it clear he's strictly here for business. Holding the document, he gives his special client the heads up that the debt's due date is exactly today. Taking her cue, the girl next to him adjusts her glasses with a subtle touch, getting ready to clock in. With a quick flick of the wrist, she pulls out a traditional wooden abacus from under her thick clothes. Instantly, her fingers start flying across the beads at a mind-blowing speed. The clacking sound echoes non-stop as she calculates the interest and late fees like an absolute machine. After wrapping up the math in record time, the young woman looks up, hyper-focused and ready to drop the hammer on this collection. While the girl mumbles the calculations at lightning speed, the sect leader watches the whole thing totally clueless about what's going down. Looking pumped, Manager Kim announces that the original 6,000 coins generated a solid 7,000 coins just in interest. Hit with that reality check, Wijichin's eyes go wide, shook to discover the total debt is now 13,000 coins. Fuming at the nonsense, he demands to know how the interest managed to be higher than the actual loan itself. Keeping his cool, the debt collector asks if the client seriously thought a private loan was gonna be cheap. He quickly reminds him that low rates are only for traditional banks, asking why they came to him in the first place. Without skipping a beat, Kim lists off the facts. The guy has a literal 0 credit score, 0 collateral, and runs a highly aggressive group. Extremely offended, the leader yells at the top of his lungs that his organization is a divine cult. But the manager hits back with straight facts, stating that to the rest of the world, they're just a bunch of villainous weirdos. Since they're a super high-risk group that could get wiped out at any second, his bank was the only one crazy enough to fund them. Sweating buckets, the celestial demon goes quiet, realizing every single word the intruder said makes total sense. Because honestly, any normal bank doing business with the cult would get hunted down and shut down by the good guys. Seizing the moment, the assistant slides the original contract right into the warrior's face. With that, she explains the rate already included a hazard premium just to cover the massive risks of dealing with them. On top of that, she points out the debtor literally signed his own name, agreeing to every single crazy clause in the paperwork. Letting out a heavy sigh, the warrior closes his eyes and tries to keep up his superior act. Backed into a corner, Wijichin openly admits he doesn't have a single dime on him right now. But he raises an index finger, signaling he's got an offer they can't refuse to fix this mess. Pointing firmly at the horizon, he tells the repo duo to look at the vast landscape down below. Super confident, he asks if the manager can see the rich and wealthy lands of the Central Plains. Staring at the view, Kim confirms he sees it all perfectly, totally ignoring the dust in the air. Instantly, the leader promises he's gonna march down there and conquer everything, turning that debt into absolute pocket change. Asking for just a 1-month extension, he guarantees he'll pay the bank back with an unbelievable amount of cash. Hyped on his own pitch, the celestial demon swears on his own name that he'll pay triple the original amount. Faced with such a wild offer, the vibe on the mountaintop gets super tense as the promise echoes around them. Holding back a little chuckle, the debt collector breaks the silence and starts cooking up his final answer. Without beating around the bush, Kim lets him know the bank doesn't invest in maybe futures, they only care about what you can pay right now. To make things worse, he drops the stat that the cult's chance of actually winning this war is less than 5%, making the risk way too high. Stomping his foot on the stone floor, the manager takes a step forward, completely dropping the whole friendly customer service act. With that, he officially declares the proposal rejected and announces that the payment deadline just expired. The mood gets incredibly heavy when the intruder reminds him that having no money instantly triggers the contract's special clauses. With his eyes glowing in a super creepy way, the manager decrees the valued customer is gonna have to pay with his own body. Hearing that level of disrespect, the veteran warrior freezes, feeling his blood totally boil with rage. Letting out a vicious growl, he loses whatever tiny bit of patience he was still trying to hold on to after that insult. Extremely ticked off, he asks how some random nobody has the nerve to demand the body of the strongest being on the planet. The menacing aura makes the assistant step back, realizing things just went totally off the rails. Caught off guard by the crushing pressure, the girl raises her hand to block the heavy winds starting to whip up. The air around them starts vibrating wildly, kicking up mini dust tornadoes all over the stairs. Watching closely, the young woman's eyes reflect the incoming danger that just woke up. Planting his foot into the ground with brutal force, the cult master preps his ultimate payback. A massive wave of dark energy explodes from Wijichin's body, cracking the stone right under his feet in a flash. Standing in the eye of that dark storm, he furiously declares himself the literal embodiment of the villainous path. Feeling highly disrespected, he rants that it's completely unacceptable for some lowly loan shark to covet his divine existence. Blinded by rage, he warns them he was planning to be nice, but now the outsider just dug his own grave. Unleashing a monstrous amount of power, the leader draws his blade coated in black flames, ready to slice the enemy right then and there. Facing the monster's fury, the debt collector puts a hand to his face and lets out a sudden groan. Right after, Kim starts screaming in despair, grabbing his own head like he's having a total panic attack. Thinking the opponent finally realized the massive gap in their power levels, the celestial demon mocks the intruder's fear. Enjoying his early victory, he tells him it's way too late to beg for mercy now. But to his surprise, the manager is actually crying over the wasted internal energy, complaining that all of that juice is now legally the bank's property. Completely broken by that ridiculous response, the warrior freezes, unable to even process what he just heard. Annoyed by the waste, the outsider scolds his client for spilling a valuable asset into the air without the creditor's permission. Clenching his fist so hard his bones pop, the leader swallows the disrespect while his anger maxes out. Calling the intruder a crazy punk, he charges forward with everything he's got, decided to end this circus once and for all. Doing a mid-air flip, the master brings his sword down for a devastating strike, but his target dodges it like it's absolutely nothing. The weapon's brutal impact smashes the stone floor, leaving a massive crater where the attack landed. Boiling with hatred, the warrior screams that he's gonna tear the collector into pieces like actual garbage. Channeling all his power, he fires off a colossal finisher move called the Dark Knight Ruin Slash. A massive wave of shadowy energy tears up the stairs, rushing to totally erase the target in a split second. Even staring a game over right in the face, the bank employee just stands there, completely chill and not sweating it at all. With a simple, super casual flick of the wrist, Manager Kim moves his right fingers. Like he's just swatting a bug, he literally swats the colossal attack up into the sky with zero effort. The deflected energy travels through the clouds and cleanly chops the peak off an entire mountain in the background, splitting the rock in half. Seeing that absurd level of destruction, the assistant's jaw drops at her boss's overwhelming flex. Totally shook, she mutters to herself that his casual parry just completely rearranged the landscape. Ignoring the giant red flags, the celestial demon starts laughing at the situation, thinking he finally found a worthy boss fight. Hyped up, he admits he gets why the guy was acting so cocky, since the outsider actually knows how to throw hands. But the warrior quickly warns him that those cheap party tricks are just gonna speed up his expiration date. Gripping his sword hilt tight, he channels even more killer aura into the dark blade. A gigantic pillar of dark power explodes around Wijichin, literally shaking the entire plains. Convinced he's got this in the bag, he tells the collector to take this next hit so he can learn how pathetic he really is. In the blink of an eye, Kim is standing right in his client's personal space, tapping him precisely on the chest and complaining that the guy talks way too much. Instantly, the cult master is completely paralyzed, feeling genuine panic flood his soul as something impossible happens. Unable to even react, the most feared warrior in the world collapses backward with a groan of pure confusion. With one single tap, the great celestial demon lost every drop of his internal energy to some random customer service rep. Shook by the counter, the warrior stammers, trying to figure out how he didn't even see the opponent move. Keeping his absolutely insane level of calm, the collector announces he's starting the debt collection process right this second. Right after, he gives the cult leader a heads up that the procedure might sting a little bit. In a flash, an explosion of golden energy starts violently pouring out of the villain's body. Feeling indescribable agony, the warrior screams his lungs out, feeling like his insides are being forcefully rearranged. Panicking, he realizes all his precious internal energy is being vacuumed out, guessing it's some kind of absorption technique. The pain just keeps leveling up, making the guy scream frantically while the bright light keeps tearing through him. Totally unbothered, Kim tells his client to just relax, warning him he's gonna suffer chi deviation if he keeps fighting it. Boiling with rage, the debtor curses the manager out, asking if he has any idea how much grinding it took to build up all that power. In response, the bank employee happily keeps sucking the energy out, claiming he's feeling super generous today. To add insult to injury, he says he's doing the guy a solid by cleaning out all the toxic chi stacked up in the poor dude's system. Unable to form a single word, the sect leader spirals into pure despair over this completely ridiculous situation. The agonizing screams of the world's strongest man echo all alone across the massive mountain. Without enough strength to even stand, his knees finally give out and slam into the stone floor. Completely humiliated and drained of all his juice, the great celestial demon is left face down in the dirt like a total loser. Absolutely exhausted, the veteran warrior can barely keep his eyes open as he struggles to catch his breath. Just doing his job, the collector bows respectfully, thanking the client for his efforts and declaring the collection complete. With that, he drops his formal job title again and introduces his assistant, Manhwa. Handing a receipt to the debtor, the guy declares the bank's deep love for its clients and hopes they use their services again. Shaking like a leaf, Wijichin holds the paper while staring into the void, trying to process this absolutely massive L. Scraping together whatever tiny bit of strength he has left, he tries to mutter something at the outsider. But all he manages to do is call the manager a punk, while the duo turns their backs and casually strolls away. The villainous master's body finally hits the ground hard, completely passing out. Right next to him, the Continental Bank's official receipt blows in the wind, officially sealing the cult's tragic fate. A little while later, the scene shifts to a peaceful, busy town in broad daylight. Inside a huge inn in the Sichuan province, the place is absolutely packed with customers. At one of the tables, a squad of warriors is chatting it up over massive plates of food and drinks. Grabbing his buddy's attention, one of the guys asks if they've caught up on the latest rumors. Playing it up for drama, he drops the trending news. Those crazy demon cult guys have completely stopped their advance. Immediately, his tablemate looks shocked and asks if there's actually any truth to that gossip. The informant confirms it's been 3 days already, throwing out the theory that their overpowered leader finally chickened out. Scolding his buddy, an older guy tells him to stop talking nonsense and asks if he even knows who they're dealing with. After all, the legend says the celestial demon is an absolute unit who wiped out faction leaders with his bare hands. Totally convinced, the veteran swears the pause is just a bait tactic to make everyone drop their guard, and it has nothing to do with enlightenment. He reminds them the demon army's push was so brutal it looked like they were gonna swallow the entire Central Plains in one bite. In reality, the massive army hitting the brakes was totally baffling and made zero sense to the rest of the world. Curious, another warrior asks if the big bad suffered a chi deviation, but the veteran shoots that idea down immediately. Across the whole dining hall, everyone is whispering, cooking up epic theories and dark conspiracies to explain this historic mystery. Until one guy hesitates and throws out a way simpler theory for the whole situation. Sipping his tea, he suggests maybe the bad guys just ran out of travel funds, since moving a whole army is pretty pricey. Dead silence takes over the restaurant for a split second before an explosion of noise breaks the tension. The veteran busts out laughing, calling the kid an idiot and reminding everyone the sect is famous for hoarding mountains of gold. Feeling a bit awkward, the guy defends himself saying he only thought of that because being broke ruins their own lives literally every day. The whole table keeps cracking up, joking that the ultimate villain stopping because he's broke is like saying he just decided to stop being evil. Eavesdropping from the next table over, manager Kim looks pretty satisfied with the local gossip. Eating his meal, the outsider silently agrees that the kid with the money theory is 100% right. Sitting across from him, his assistant backs up the idea without a second thought. Resting her chin on her hand, she points out how ironic it is that money doesn't care if you're human, a ghost, or the cult master. Suddenly, the inn's waiter rolls up offering the menu and hyping up how fresh today's ingredients are. Hyped, the girl reminds her boss that he promised her a massive feast after hiking all the way to the enemy mountains. Killing the vibe instantly, the manager gets his subordinate's attention with a super serious tone. He makes it crystal clear that the company card is not her personal allowance, reminding her they got paid in energy, not actual cash. Looking scary as hell, Kim announces the bank is currently operating in the red. Flipping back to a cheerful tone in a split second, he orders 2 bowls of the absolute cheapest noodles from the waiter, while the girl complains in disbelief. In no time, the super basic meal arrives steaming hot for the 2 exhausted travelers. Annoyed by his cheapness, she curses her boss hoping he goes bald, but he just claps back that saving money doesn't cause hair loss. Accepting her fate, the assistant inhales the simple food and asks where the next sucker they're visiting lives. The guy scolds her vocabulary, making sure to call them clients, but agrees to drop their next travel destination. Switching back to his dark, serious face, the debt collector reveals their next target is at Mount Hua. Far away from there, the massive mountain rests under the moonlight in the Shanxi province. Down in the busy streets at the base of the mountain, the nightlife is still popping with people shopping around. Walking casually through the area, the repo duo finally makes it to their planned drop zone. Pointing at an old, isolated pavilion, the manager announces that this is gonna be their precious workspace for the night. Before they can get any closer, the property guards start yelling, demanding the intruders stop right there. One of the bouncers questions what 2 kids are doing out in the middle of nowhere so late, letting them know trespassing is a no-go. Checking out the beat-up building, Manhwa gets super confused as to why a dump like this even has security. Blocked at the door, she mutters to herself, trying to figure out what kind of sketchy business they're running here. Super politely, Kim lets them know they're here on business, but the guard cuts him off and demands an entry token. Still rocking the customer service smile, the outsider happily replies that he doesn't have any sort of pass. That smart-aleck answer makes the bouncer frown, totally losing whatever tiny bit of patience he had left. Moving totally in sync, the guards draw their swords, the metal ringing out as the blades cut through the cold night air. Trying to look tough, the guy tells the duo to get lost while they still have all their limbs attached, before the floor gets messy. Hiding in the shadows of the forest, the bank employee's face shows he is highly amused by this cheap threat. Taking a confident step forward, he notes that the guard has the eyes of someone who's permanently ended people before. With his eyes glowing a creepy blue, the manager decides this attitude just isn't gonna fly, and these bouncers need a lesson in manners. Jumping off the roof, the guard yells that the intruder is gonna cry when he sees his own coffin, calling the guy a punk. With that, the warrior dives straight at the manager, sword ready to swing. Keeping his insane level of chill, Kim just holds out a hand, radiating a terrifying amount of confidence. Moving like water, he dodges the slashing attack with ridiculous ease, creating a gust of wind in the process. Completely shook, the bouncer realizes instantly that he missed the hit by a hair. Before he can even block, the guy gets launched away by the sheer impact, screaming as he rolls across the dirt. Seeing his buddy get dropped that fast, the second guard starts panicking, completely lost on what just happened. Furious about the whole thing, he curses the outsider and charges at him, seeing red. Channeling his energy, the guard unleashes a deadly sword technique, aiming to slice the enemy into ribbons. To everyone's shock, the collector pinches the glowing blade using just 2 fingers, looking completely unbothered. The impact literally freezes in midair, putting the massive skill gap between them on full display. Totally frozen in place, the guard can't understand how his ultimate move got shut down in such a humiliating way. Taking advantage of the opening, Kim dashes forward at a crazy speed, zipping right past the opponent. In a split second, the swordsman's body gets hit by multiple energy strikes all at once. Feeling bone-crushing pain, the guy groans as the devastating impact completely breaks his stance. The security guard's heavy body finally hits the dirt, completely out for the count. Watching the whole thing from a distance, Manhwa studies her boss with a deep, focused look. Super curious, the girl realizes that no matter how much she analyzes it, she still can't figure out his fighting style. She quickly notices the manager's martial arts definitely don't belong to any of the orthodox factions. On the flip side, she's absolutely sure those moves don't come from the unorthodox factions either. Plus, she remembers that not too long ago, he literally soloed the demon cult and put the celestial demon on a leash. The young woman thinks to herself that a master on that level should be a legend in the martial world, making it impossible for her not to know him. Dying of curiosity, Ruha wonders what her boss's true identity is and debates if she should just straight up ask him. She hesitates for a second, weighing if it's even worth trying to pull that info out of him. But she quickly scraps the idea, figuring he dodged the question before and is definitely gonna keep gatekeeping his secret. Down in the dirt, the bouncers groan in pain while clutching their bruised arms. A wave of leftover energy ripples through their bodies, making the guys cry out in agony. Silence takes over the courtyard again as the repo duo stares down the neutralized security guards. Impressed, the girl asks if he unalived them, but Kim says he only cut their meridians so they wouldn't hurt any innocent people. Right after, he tells Ruha to drag the bodies to a corner, ignoring her shocked face to avoid unnecessary drama if someone walked by. Muttering curses at her boss, the young girl drags the heavy bouncer away while Kim pushes open the pavilion door. The manager stands in the dark entryway, scanning the inside of the abandoned shack with a sharp eye. Liking what he sees, he lets out a quiet hum, clearly interested in this sketchy location. Looking around, the debt collector points out a hidden staircase leading straight underground. Without wasting a second, the guy starts walking down the stone steps into the depths of the building. Hitting the bottom of the stairs, a massive wave of people yelling and placing bets hits his ears. Hyped about the find, he looks super happy and lets out a surprised wow at the whole setup. Right in front of him is a massive underground casino, absolutely packed shoulder to shoulder with people. Across the room, gamblers are screaming their heads off, swearing they'd bet their own hands on the next play. At another table, a guy is yelling in frustration, blaming his buddy for losing their cash in such a stupid way. Right behind him, Ruha finally catches up to her boss, getting hit with the guy's usual bright and shiny attitude. Annoyed, she complains about how slow he is and mutters that the manager totally could have helped hide the bodies. But when the girl looks around, she's completely baffled, asking if this sketchy gambling den is actually their workplace today. Keeping his usual chill vibe, the bank employee confirms her guess and looks super pumped about it. Disgusted, the assistant complains the air is super stuffy and that it reeks of dirty money in there. Suddenly, the crowd next to them erupts in cheers, instantly grabbing the duo's attention. The guys around the table are going wild, completely amazed by the kid who just clutched his third win in a row. Locking eyes on the winner, the manager tells his partner that their client is sitting right over there. In the mystery gambler's hands, the game pieces shine under the dim light of the lanterns. Kicking back in his chair, the kid is oozing confidence as he rakes in his chips while the crowd watches. Right on the chest of his robes, the totally unmistakable plum blossom emblem stands out. Recognizing the logo immediately, Ruha gets super anxious and visibly stressed about the situation. Mind blown, she asks out loud if tonight's sucker is seriously a disciple of the legendary Manhwa sect. Dropping a slightly intimidating vibe, the debt collector corrects his subordinate, reminding her of their chat from earlier. He firmly reinforces that the kid isn't a sucker, but a highly valued client of their bank. The manager drops the lore. The target is named Chingsang, the direct disciple of the sect leader and the youngest swordsman in history. Flashing a sketch of the guy, he mentions that just hearing this kid's name has made the martial arts world shake in its boots. But then Kim shakes the paper and sarcastically points out that the kid's gambling skills are pure, unadulterated garbage. Offended by the double standard, the young girl calls out her boss's hypocrisy, only for him to defend himself saying the insult was strictly about the skills. Ignoring the weak excuse, the girl focuses on what actually matters and asks if the intel on the game is legit. At the gambling table, Chingsang quietly stares at his pieces, plotting his next 500 IQ move. Looking as calm as a pro, he crunches the odds in his head before making a call. Not afraid to risk it all, the swordsman matches the bet and instantly raises it by 10 coins. Using a bossy tone, he orders the other players to reveal their hands, sending his opponents into a panic. The sharp clack of the pieces hitting the wood echoes across the table, revealing the results of the high-stakes round. Immediately, his crew starts screaming in celebration, hyping up another massive W for their boy. Completely losing his cool, the kid celebrates like crazy while scooping up all the cash he just won. Watching from the sidelines, Ruha crosses her arms and points out to her boss that the target just won again. She notices his moves are pretty sloppy, guessing he really is just a total noob with insane beginner's luck. Happy with her read, Kim agrees about the luck factor and mentions it would be absolutely perfect if the kid just cashed out right now. Right after, the manager asks his assistant if she knows what the most terrifying thing in a casino is. Nearby, Chingsang's buddies keep inflating his ego, swearing he's gonna bankrupt the whole place tonight. But hiding in the shadows at that exact same table, an older dude is radiating pure sketchy energy, just waiting to capitalize on the situation. Wrapping up his thought, the collector explains that the real nightmare starts precisely when the sucker wins purely on luck. Looking at the tense vibe, it's super obvious that the young disciple's winning streak is about to turn into an absolute disaster. Hearing that, Manhwa starts looking visibly worried about what's coming next. Almost like a literal curse, the kid's lucky streak starts subtly falling apart at the table. Super confident in his play, Chingsang drops his pieces claiming he just secured another win. Losing by a single point, one of the guys groans about almost having it. Chuckling nervously, the disciple says nobody wins them all and that it was just a small bet anyway. Soon the setup kicks in, making the target bleed massive amounts of cash by the tiniest of margins. Slamming his pieces on the table, the kid claims he drew a god-tier hand and thinks he finally clutched up. But the older opponent shows his hand with a smug tone, revealing he's literally 1 point higher. Panicking, the kid instantly plays another hand, desperately trying to win his money back no matter what. But the scammer shows his pieces again, acting relieved that his score is just slightly better. Keeping up the act, the older guy laughs and says he almost feels bad for winning like this back-to-back. Shaking with rage, the swordsman grinds his teeth, completely tilted by his opponent's ridiculous luck. Taking L after L over such tiny details completely shatters the poor kid's mental state. Trying to stop a disaster, his sect buddy tells him they should bounce since it's late and his luck has officially run dry. Totally blinded by the gambling addiction, the target ignores his friend and starts frantically searching his own pockets. Without thinking twice, he tosses a massive pile of silver coins onto the table. Shoving his entire life savings forward, the kid goes all in with every last penny he has. The crowd around them gasps, totally shocked to see him bet absolutely everything he owns in one go. Flashing a totally unhinged smile, the disciple yells that his gut feeling guarantees a win this time. After the make or break move, a heavy silence drops over the room as the opponent just stares at him. Smelling the incoming disaster, his buddy makes up a random excuse and straight up runs away. The vibe at the table gets super heavy, making it obvious that things have completely derailed. Happy with the damage done, the opponent stands up to scoop up his massive winnings. Watching from a distance, manager Kim tells his assistant it's finally their turn to step up to the plate. But back at the table, the scammer sits right back down to keep milking his victim dry. The game drags on in dead silence for a while longer. After completely scraping the bottom of the barrel, the opponent gets up for good, officially ending the session. Seeing the tragic ending, the bank employee announces it's finally time to clock in and do some work. Outside the casino, the night is super chill, with the mountains lit up by the moonlight. Sitting in the dirt, Chingsang is pulling his hair out, totally drowning in despair and regret. Completely losing it, the swordsman mumbles that he actually went insane. Tearing at his own hair, he cries over losing his entire fortune, and is terrified his master is gonna beat him into next week. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps walking up gives the kid a massive jump scare. Greeting him like an old friend, Kim steps out of the shadows, calling the kid a valued customer. Flashing a friendly smile, he pitches a quick loan with same-day approval and zero collateral needed. Playing the perfect salesman, the guy hypes up the Continental Bank as the ultimate lifesaver for all the local problems. Caught completely off guard by the weird pitch, the broke kid just stares at the duo like they have 3 heads. Still sitting in the dirt, he asks what the heck kind of sketchy bank name is that. Putting 2 and 2 together, he gets spooked and asks if these outsiders are loan sharks pushing easy cash. Never dropping his customer service game, the manager keeps smiling while listening to the kid's accusations. Smoothly, Kim replies the client can use whatever label he wants, since they're just here to help people in a tough spot. Highly offended by the audacity, the disciple jumps to his feet, already drawing his sword from its sheath. Flexing his ego, he demands to know how they have the nerve to offer a loan to a warrior of Manhwa. Finding the reaction funny, the employee lets him know there's been a huge misunderstanding. With a quick flick, the debt collector holds up a massive string completely loaded with shiny silver coins. Staring at all that cash, the swordsman's eyes literally start twitching from pure greed. Ignoring the drawn sword, the manager states that the reputation of a famous sect means absolutely zero to him. Flashing a sly grin, Kim suggests that this money is the kid's perfect chance to win back everything he lost. Sweating bullets, temptation completely takes over the debtor as he stares at the fortune right in the outsider's hand. Mind blown, the kid realizes this guy seriously doesn't care about Manhua's influence at all. Pushed by his own addiction, he grinds his teeth, fighting a losing battle against the insane urge to play just one more round. Blinded by greed, the disciple convinces himself he could totally turn this around if he just had that stack of cash. Seeing his weakness, the collector quickly holds up an official bank contract. Oozing friendliness, Kim says the process is super easy and he'll hand over the cash the second the ink dries. Without even skimming the terms and conditions, the kid grabs the brush and aggressively signs the paper. Right after, he rudely shoves the pen back into the employee's hands. The contract now has the kid's name on it, officially sealing his absolute doom. Letting them know he signed the paperwork, the target demands the funds instantly. Looking like an absolute maniac, the kid yells at the outsider to cough up the cash right now. Snapping his fingers with a huge smile, the manager praises the smart choice and officially approves the loan. Snatching the money fast, the disciple turns his back and sprints straight back to the casino. Shook by the whole thing, Manhwa points out the kid totally lost his mind and didn't even glance back once. Looking down, the girl notices the contract was just left lying in the dirt and looks surprised. Confused by the whole scenario, the assistant asks why a supposedly noble Manhwa warrior is now their client. She thinks out loud that gambling is bad and all, but the kid didn't do anything nearly as villainous as the celestial demon. Turning his head, Kim asks if his subordinate seriously thinks he picks his targets based on their moral compass. Keeping his chill smile, he clarifies that to the bank, every single one of them is just a martial artist. With his eyes shining in the dark, the collector decrees that the only thing that actually matters is if the person has what he wants. Wrapping up his logic, the guy claims the rules of the business are just that simple. Hearing her boss's ice-cold logic, the young girl goes quiet, truly processing how dangerous this dude actually is. But their chat gets cut short by the heavy sound of footsteps stomping through the woods. A huge, scary-looking thug pops out of nowhere, but the manager dashes forward at a speed the eye can't even track. Giving him zero time to block, Kim lands pinpoint energy strikes right on the goon's chest. Rocking a hyped-up smile, the bank employee watches a massive squad of thugs fully surround the area. Standing right behind the criminals, the exact same scammer from the casino points at the duo, confirming they're the ones. Seeing the mess, Kim complains that Manhwa should have done a better job hiding the bouncers' bodies. Hearing that, the girl snaps back that he literally just told her to drag them to the corner. Right after, the leader of the squad introduces himself as Jang Mo from the Viper Gang, flexing his authority. He demands the outsiders drop their names and affiliations. Not losing an ounce of cool, the manager gives his standard formal intro. Confused, the big guy repeats the bank's name, clearly thinking this whole situation is weird as heck. Trying to jog his memory, the leader realizes he's never heard of this crew in his entire life. Because of that, he writes the outsider off as just some random nobody. Boiling with anger, the big dude calls the manager an arrogant punk. He warns him that acting tough right in the middle of his gang's turf is a massively stupid idea. Finding the threat hilarious, Kim oozes confidence and asks why he should even care about that. Hearing that level of disrespect makes the thug's patience vanish into thin air in a split second. Furious, the boss orders his goons to break the intruder's arms and legs, but he warns them not to send the guy to the afterlife, since that would ruin their business. Without missing a beat, the army of criminals takes the order and rushes the repo duo with everything they've got. One of the thugs jumps up with his sword ready, screaming like a wild animal as he charges up a lethal strike. With an incredibly simple move, the manager just gives the enemy's blade a tiny little tap in midair. Taking advantage of the opening, the outsider propels himself forward at an absolutely mind-blowing speed. Caught completely off guard, the criminal panics when he realizes he just totally lost track of his opponent. With zero chance to block, the guy eats a massive counterattack that instantly caves his ribs in. Watching his buddy hit the floor, another goon curses at the bank employee and attacks him blindly from behind. With god-tier reflexes, Kim dodges the slash and instantly lands a brutal counterpunch right on the guy's face. Focused on wrapping up this side quest fast, he keeps flowing smoothly through the battlefield. Handing out beatdowns left and right, the manager fires off an energy blast that sends another enemy flying. The impact is so insane that the criminals' bodies are getting tossed through the air like literal ragdolls. Standing totally still, the gang leader watches in disbelief as his crew gets absolutely folded on the dirt floor. Sweating bullets, the big guy starts realizing he seriously messed with the wrong dude as he listens to his men groaning in pain. Genuine terror completely hijacks the criminal's brain after witnessing that absolute massacre. Right in the middle of the chaos, the outsider is standing perfectly fine, surrounded by dozens of completely wrecked thugs. Shook, the leader tries to process how one single guy managed to pack up so many people in a matter of seconds. The manager is putting out an aura so intensely intimidating that he looks like an actual horror movie monster. Staring into the abyss, the gang boss simply cannot comprehend where this ridiculous level of power is coming from. Totally frozen, the big guy is shaking in his boots, feeling like his game over screen is loading up fast. Trying to mask his total panic, the thug acts super fake and praises the young outsider's combat skills. Ignoring the cheap compliment, the debt collector tells him his only ticket out of this is getting on his knees and begging for mercy. Hearing such a humiliating demand makes the leader's blood boil, completely snapping whatever tiny bit of sanity he had left. Blinded by rage, the gang boss charges forward swinging, completely determined to flatten this annoying punk. But with a hyper-precise move, Kim lands an energy-packed uppercut kick straight under the big guy's chin. From the brutal hit, the absolute unit coughs up a massive amount of damage while getting launched straight into the sky. The criminal's heavy body crashes back down to earth violently, literally leaving a crater from the impact. Seeing their boss get one-shotted, one of the few guys left standing goes into full panic mode and runs away screaming for help. Totally unbothered, the bank employee just watches the coward disappear into the dark woods. Dropping an incredibly scary look, he tells the knocked-out boss he's gonna let this slide, but he drops a heavy warning that there will be massive consequences if they ever open another casino. Completely broken on the ground, the big guy is shivering in terror, unable to squeeze out a single word in response. Turning his head, the collector announces that it's his assistant's turn to clock in, leaving the girl completely confused. Pointing at the sea of knocked-out bodies, the manager orders her to clean up this entire mess right now. Super salty about doing the dirty work, the young girl grumbles, calling her boss a slave driver and a bald weirdo behind his back. Hearing the insults loud and clear, the outsider actually finds the whole thing funny and just keeps walking. Staring up at the full moon, the guy switches topics, casually wondering if their client managed to win his cash back. Meanwhile, down in the pavilion's basement, the tension at the packed gambling table is through the roof. The young Manhwa disciple grips his chips, visibly shaking as the crushing weight of reality ruins his vibe. Slamming his fist on the table, the kid screams in pure rage after losing 5 straight rounds by exactly 1 point. Completely losing his grip on reality, he lunges at the scammer, accusing the guy of rigging the whole game. Keeping up the act, the opponent fakes looking offended and claps back that he can't fix the kid's terrible RNG. To make it even more humiliating, the rest of the gamblers start roasting the supposedly elite Manhwa disciple for throwing a temper tantrum. The entire room bursts into laughter, completely clowning the pathetic state of the swordsman whose life was ruined by his addiction. Unable to handle the heat, the target bolts out of the casino, sprinting all the way out to the courtyard. Waiting outside, the manager welcomes him back with a massive smile, asking if he's officially done playing. Seeing the outsider, the debtor's eyes light up with relief, thinking he just found his ultimate lifesaver in the dark. Desperate, the disciple begs for more cash, prompting the collector to ask if he's looking for another loan. Looking totally unhinged, the kid swears on everything that if he gets one more try, he'll clutch up and pay off the whole debt. Keeping it super professional, the employee says his credit limit is fine, but this time they're gonna need some solid collateral. Thinking fast, the swordsman pulls a highly valuable object out from under his robes. Flashing a green emblem, he offers up the ultra-rare jade plaque that was handed down to him by his sex leader. Completely consumed by the gambling brain rot, the kid hands over the sacred relic he was supposed to protect with his life. Thrilled with the loot, Kim accepts the collateral without blinking and drops another ridiculous stack of coins into the client's hands. Without wasting a millisecond, the kid turns around and sprints back to the gambling tables like an absolute madman. Dripping with pure sarcasm, the manager knows exactly how the next few hours are gonna play out. The toxic cycle turns the swordsman into a literal ghost, pacing back and forth in pure panic. Completely broke again, the target stumbles out of the pavilion, screaming and begging for more credit. Drenched in sweat, He swears on the name of Manhua that he'll pay it all back with crazy high interest if he just wins the next hand. Calm as a cucumber, the outsider tells the client to take a breather and assures him the bank totally believes in his potential. Just like that, loan number 3 is greenlit instantly, filling the addict's hands with solid gold bars. But the lucky break never arrives, leaving the warrior shivering in the corners while cursing his own terrible RNG over and over. Before long, the collector approves line of credit number 4, dragging the victim deeper into a pit of no return. Soon enough, loan number 5 drops, turning the debt into an absolutely massive, unpayable snowball. With every lost round, the clack of the pieces hitting the wood seals the tragic fate of the once promising prodigy. Completely drained, the kid drops his head onto the betting table, realizing his life is officially over. Reality finally hits, making the disciple scream in pure agony as his brain practically short-circuits. The raw screams echo through the isolated forest, officially marking the end of history's youngest swordsman. Satisfied with the absolute wreckage, the manager drops a creepy smile and announces that they are officially off the clock. Walking away from the casino, manager Kim casually suggests they head home, leaving his assistant super confused about the sudden rush. Totally lost, Rihua asks what about collecting the money they just loaned, while the kid's desperate screams keep echoing in the background. Laughing at the whole thing, the collector promises it's all good and compares debts to soy sauce, claiming they actually taste better when you let them age. Worried, the girl asks what they're supposed to do if the kid just ghosts them or tells them to rip his guts out because he's broke. Stopping in his tracks, the outsider glances over his shoulder and drops a super dark comment saying that scenario would actually be a win. Flashing a wicked grin, Kim reveals that if that happens, he can literally just rip open the client's precious guts exactly like he asked. The next morning, the legendary Manhua sect is looking incredibly peaceful under the bright mountain sun. Total silence rules the long wooden hallways of the main pavilion, which is a massive 180 from last night's chaos. The morning light slowly creeps into the rooms through the traditional paper doors. Curled up in his bed, Chingsang is clutching his head, getting absolutely eaten alive by regret. Tugging at his own hair in a total panic, the young swordsman curses his own terrible luck on repeat. Eyes wide with pure terror, he realizes he totally lost his mind and starts questioning just how badly he messed up. The kid admits it was incredibly stupid to take out loans with loan shark interest rates while throwing his prestigious sect's name around. To make things 10 times worse, he remembers he pawned off the purple jade plaque his master gave him, giving him a look of absolute insanity. Panic totally takes over the disciple's body, making his hands shake like crazy as reality hits him like a truck. Fearing the absolute worst, the warrior realizes getting expelled would be the good ending, because his master is definitely gonna end him if he finds out. Suddenly, loud knocks on the door shatter the silence, making the debtor jump out of his skin. From the hallway, a buddy tells him the sect leader is looking for him ASAP. Hearing that makes the kid's blood run ice cold, completely hijacking his brain with pure panic. Sweating bullets, he stutters his boss's title, fully convinced his horrible secret just got leaked. Walking over to the main hall, the kid is terrified of facing the absolute top boss of Manhua. Once inside, Chingsang respectfully drops to his knees in the middle of the empty room right in front of the leader. Looking completely zen, Master Hyunjong calls out his favorite student's name. Keeping his head glued to the floor, the kid answers super awkwardly, trying his hardest to hide his panic. The veteran points out that the kid skipped morning practice and asks if he's been slacking off lately. Panicking, the swordsman apologizes and makes up a lie about feeling sick, when his only real issue is his massive gambling debt. Clicking his tongue, the leader gives him a light scolding, reminding him that a top-tier warrior needs to take care of his own HP. With a quick flick, the man tosses a small, dark object right at his subordinate. The wooden box hits the floor with a thud right in front of the completely spooked kid. Caught off guard by the move, the disciple stares at the item, having zero clue what's going on. Checking out the fancy, decorated wooden box, the kid tries to figure out what kind of loot he just got. Slowly, he catches a faint herbal scent leaking out from the tiny chest. Keeping his boss posture, Hyunjong drops the reveal that it's a plum blossom pill and tells the kid to eat it to level up his stats. The shock of that reveal leaves the disciple completely stunned, knowing how insanely rare that drop is. Snatching the item in a hurry, the swordsman pops the lid, not believing his own eyes. Inside sits a glowing red pill, radiating some seriously overpowered energy. The debtor just stares at the medicine, totally mind blown, knowing it's the ultimate item every martial artist grinds for. Gulping hard, the guilt eats him alive seeing his master hand him a legendary gift instead of punishing him, completely clueless about his casino bender. Totally overwhelmed by the kindness, the warrior stammers, unable to even put a proper thank you together. Radiating pure dad energy, the veteran smiles warmly at his absolute mess of a student. With kind words, the leader claims that if the kid falls off, the sect's whole future goes down with him, telling him to go get some rest. Holding the treasure, the disciple's eyes well up with tears of gratitude over such an incredibly generous move. A super warm feeling hits the kid's heart, deeply moved by his boss acting like a real father figure. But then the greed kicks back in, and he instantly thinks about selling the god-tier med to buy back his pawned jade plaque. Isolating himself on the pavilion's porch, the swordsman stares off into the distance while a massive storm of thoughts wrecks his brain. Sitting on the floor, the kid feels like absolute trash for trying to put a price tag on the gift, realizing he's acting worse than an animal. Standing up slowly, the sound of a commotion in the main courtyard catches his attention. Curious about all the random noise, the warrior peeks over his shoulder to see what the hype is about. Near the gate, some humble villagers are bowing, offering gifts to the monks and begging for some good RNG in life. Super polite, one of the sect members helps the old lady up and promises to pray for her with all his heart. Watching the scene, Sang notices the hardcore devotion of these people who blindly trust Manhua. In their rough hands, the locals are holding fruit and rice cakes they obviously made with a ton of care. Seeing that pure, noble Taoist aesthetic hits the debtor like a straight punch to the gut. Taking in the holy vibe, the kid's face immediately contorts into pure bitterness. The weight of his own massive screw-ups crushes the disciple, making him lean against the pillar looking totally defeated. Grinding his teeth in pure frustration, he curses the absolute massive hole he dug for himself one more time. Making a super drastic call, the swordsman smacks the box into his other hand with serious conviction. His fingers grip the fancy wood super tight, totally throwing whatever tiny bit of morals he had left right out the window. Hiding the treasure inside his robes, he drops a dark look and decides this is the only way out. Standing up with totally corrupted determination, the warrior decides he's gonna sell the divine pill at the pawn shop, no matter what it takes. Trying to justify his crime, the kid tells himself that eating the medicine would only buff his stats, but selling it saves the sacred item. Pretty soon, he convinces himself that selling the gift is way less disrespectful than losing the boss's jade plaque forever. Promising to put out this massive fire first, the kid swears he'll grind until he drops to make his sect rich later. Totally buying his own fake logic, the disciple walks through the hall thinking he just figured out the 200 IQ play. Hours roll by, and the dark night completely takes over the quiet roofs of Manhua. Decided on fixing this mess, the swordsman promises himself he's never stepping foot near a casino ever again. Using the shadows, he dashes across the roof tiles with super light, fast steps so nobody catches him slipping. The agile silhouette of the warrior clears the massive estate walls under a super bright full moon. Sticking the landing flawlessly, the kid cushions his fall, finally outside the military fortress. Rocking a highly focused and dangerous look, the guy sneaks toward his late-night objective. In his head, the debtor apologizes to his master for breaking the strict rules like this. Sang blasts through the dark forest trail at an absolutely ridiculous speed. Suddenly, a voice calls his name out of nowhere, making him freeze in pure panic instantly. Right in front of him, a senior colleague is just standing there in the middle of the moonlit path. Flashing a friendly smile, the guy asks where the prodigy disciple is sneaking off to this late at night. Sweating buckets, Sang curses his terrible luck, realizing the night guard is literally the strictest senior in the whole sect. Playing it cool, he thanks the guy for the late-night grind, remembering that Nyom does not let anything slide. Cutting to the chase, the older guy tells him to drop the fake act and demands to know where the kid is going this late. Fishing for an excuse, the disciple makes up a story about feeling claustrophobic and just needing some fresh air. Giving him a super suspicious side-eye, the senior asks if getting fresh air requires jumping the estate walls in the pitch dark. Reality quickly slaps the young swordsman, making him realize how incredibly dumb his panic excuse sounded. With that, the night guard walks up quietly, scanning the kid's totally sketchy body language. The guy's eyes narrow fast, instantly picking up that something is completely off here. Without wasting time, his eyes lock straight onto a weird bulge in the kid's clothes. The senior immediately asks what the kid is hiding, totally ignoring his denials and demanding to see the item right now. With a lightning-fast move, Nyom snatches the tiny wooden box straight out of the spooked kid's robes. Popping the lid, he goes into absolute shock, asking in disbelief if this is the legendary plum blossom pill. Inside the rustic container, the spiritual loot glows brightly, totally standing out in the dark night. Mind blown, the guy demands to know where he got it, only to hear the kid stutter that the master himself handed it over. That lore drop catches the senior totally off guard, asking in pure shock if the boss really gifted him that. Rocking a massive smile, the veteran's whole vibe flips from bad cop to proud dad in a split second. Super proud, he hands the item back, hyping up the master's genius for recognizing the kid's insane talent. But then the suspicion comes right back, and Chung-Nyom asks why the heck he's carrying it outside the sect at 3 a.m. Feeling the heat, the debtor lies, saying the jealous stares were stressing him out and he wanted to pop the pill in private. Hearing that bizarre logic, the older guy blinks a few times, totally lost on how that makes any sense. In the end, the guard reads the room completely wrong, actually getting emotional over the kid's fake humility and even apologizing. Hyped up, he claps the swordsman on the shoulder and says he'll play bodyguard, telling him to swallow the pill right this second. Absolute panic takes over the kid's face, as he sweats bullets and asks if he seriously has to absorb it right here in the dirt. Totally missing the kid's internal screaming, the colleague says the buff kicks in instantly, and it's safer to have a spotter for the process. With zero way out, the disciple's legs give up on him, and he drops to his knees right on the cold forest floor. Super pumped, the veteran sits down in a lotus pose, while the kid secretly curses the old guy's happy mood. Trying to dodge this massive L, Ching-sang tries to decline the help, claiming he'd rather meditate and grind his stats in absolute silence. That stubbornness ticks the guy off, and he drops a heavy lecture about the literal fatal risks of suffering a chi deviation. Very firmly, he tells the kid to drop the polite act and start absorbing the spiritual loot right now. Fishing for more excuses, the kid claims his muscles ache and his stomach hurts, but just gets told to go handle it in the bushes and come right back. An insanely awkward silence takes over the woods, while the duo just sits there in the dark doing absolutely nothing. Realizing his genius plan to sell the pill just crashed and burned, the debtor mentally declares that he is officially screwed. With shaky hands, he opens the box one last time, staring at his only financial lifeline slipping away. The swordsman hesitates while holding the medicine, feeling the crushing pressure of his senior watching his every move like a hawk. Out of options, the kid tosses the plum blossom pill into his mouth, his heart practically breaking in real time. A little while later, an explosion of blue energy starts pouring out of the kid's body while he's deep in meditation. Throwing up hand signs, the young warrior's pure aura lights up the night with an absolutely crazy intensity. Amazed by the visuals, Chung-Nyom can't hide his shock at how insanely pure the energy is getting. Bursting with pride, the guy pats the rookie on the shoulder and says congrats, hyping up the sect leader's perfect judgment. With the process done, the veteran stands up, looking super satisfied with the final stats and gets ready to head out. Keeping the act going, the disciple puts his hands together in a sign of deep respect, thanking him for the carry. The kid promises that thanks to his older buddy's help, he's gonna grind his training even harder now. Flashing a massively fake smile, he keeps the performance up, giving all the credit for his level up to the night guard. The second the veteran disappears into the dark trail, the young swordsman is left all alone under the moonlight. The mask finally slips, and the kid's face twists into pure panic as he admits his life is officially over. With the new energy pulsing through him, the warrior cries over the fact that the treasure is currently in his stomach and is worth exactly $0. Freaking out, the guy realizes there's zero chance of making that cash now, and the repo guys are definitely gonna leak his search history to the whole world. The mental image of the manager holding that cursed contract haunts the kid's brain, knowing he's definitely getting banned from the sect. Eaten alive by the stress, the disciple's face contorts into pure madness while he aggressively bites his own lips. His eyes go incredibly wide, totally losing whatever tiny bit of sanity and honor he still had in him. Suddenly, a super dark idea hits the warrior's brain and he mutters to himself, needing a second to process it. In that exact moment, the kid's morals log off for good as he figures out that a debt only matters if the collector is still breathing. Gripping his sword under the moonlight, the swordsman's vibe completely shifts to pure lethal killer intent. With a twisted smile, he starts wondering what would happen if the debt collector just suddenly vanished from the server. Thinking about the outsider duo, the kid totally underestimates them, figuring he can easily eliminate some random loan sharks quietly. The blue aura glows bright and the debtor realizes the ironic truth. The pill literally gave him the perfect stat boost to get the job done. Totally corrupted, the the disciple asks out loud why he should ever bother paying back that ridiculous fortune. Looking like an absolute monster, he comes to the very obvious conclusion that the best strat is to just wipe the two collectors off the map. Standing alone in the massive forest, the weight of this insane decision hangs over the kid as he sinks straight into villain territory. With dead, creepy eyes, Mount Hua's young prodigy totally throws his future and humanity straight into the trash. The crazy idea bounces around the kid's messed up head again, making him hesitate for a split second as he tries to justify it. But his honor is already long gone, and the warrior doubles down, telling himself that paying back that cash would be an astronomically stupid move. The swordsman's face goes back to that demonic look, officially locking in the plan to unalive the outsiders. Under the bright full moon, the dead silent night completely takes over the empty roofs and streets of the chill village. Walking with heavy, confident steps, the lone disciple stops right in front of a pretty big building. Seeing his target, he mutters coldly that he finally found the building he'd been hunting for all night. Right in front of him is the Hwang Inn, the exact spot where those sketchy creditors said they were gonna crash. The memory of manager Kim demanding the cash in room 5 pops up loud and clear in the assassin's head. Dead set on finishing his dirty work, the kid's eyes show absolutely zero signs of regret. Using the dark to his advantage, he pushes the wooden door open, trying his hardest not to make a single sound. The inn's inside hallway is completely empty, lit only by a couple of weak lanterns. The warrior's stealthy footsteps don't make a single sound on the floorboards as he moves straight through the shadows. On the way there, the young guy keeps repeating his twisted logic. No creditor means no debt, plain and simple. Super confident, he plans to end the duo, grab his jade plaque back, and pretend this entire night never even happened. At the end of the dark hallway, the door with the number 5 waits in total silence, setting the stage for the incoming ambush. Standing still in the quiet hall, Chingsang finally makes it to the door of room 5. Pressing his face against the wood, the swordsman holds his breath, trying to hear any movement inside. Soon enough, he picks up the faint mumbles of a guy and a girl, making him 100% sure his targets are in there. The mental image of manager Kim and his assistant Mac Rihua pops into the kid's head, pouring gasoline on his crazy plan. Without hesitating for another second, the disciple grabs the hilt of his weapon tight. Drawing his blade glowing with a bright pink aura, he swears to finish the whole thing in one single hit. Coldly, the kid apologizes for what he's about to do, but promises sending them both to the Shadow Realm means they won't be lonely. Dropping all his stacked-up energy, the young guy unleashes a completely devastating attack on the building. A brutal explosion of power erupts from the floor, literally shaking the entire inn. Totally losing it, he spams the 7th stance of the legendary Plum Blossom sword art. Like a lightning bolt, a massive cross-shaped wave of energy blasts forward to totally erase the room. The absolute overkill impact shreds the building's walls and ceiling into pieces in a split second. Under the moonlight, the whole inn gets swallowed by a monumental explosion that just flattens everything around it. Right after, energy petals rain down over the rubble as the assassin finishes his ultimate move. Where a chill hotel used to be, there's now just a massive pile of debris and pure destruction. As soon as the dust settles, the assassin lets out a sigh of relief, declaring the nightmare is finally over. Deep down, the kid admits he feels zero guilt or regret, just a massive weight lifted off his chest. That suffocating feeling of being buried in debt is gone for good, letting the swordsman actually breathe again. But the sound of people rushing over spooks the kid, making him realize the massive scene he just caused. Then the panic hits him again when he remembers he urgently needs to grab the jade plaque. Frantically searching, Chingsang digs through the rubble trying to find his master's sacred item. The clock is ticking, and the pure panic on his face gets worse as he tears through the wrecked area. Luckily for him, the treasure is just chilling there, totally fine in the dirt, making the kid celebrate the drop. With the premium loot in his hands, the disciple books it away from the crime scene without looking back once. Using the late-night shadows, he starts doing parkour over the village roofs, pulling off the perfect escape route. The warrior sprints through the empty streets as fast as humanly possible to put some distance between him and the disaster. Cutting through the night wind, the kid keeps his super-fast pace heading straight for the safety of his sect. Panting hard, he hugs the jade amulet to his chest, trying to get his breathing under control. Sweat drips down the swordsman's face as he finally starts processing the absolute insanity he just pulled off. Completely broken on the inside, the kid lets out a creepy, hysterical laugh into the darkness. Blinded by relief, the young guy hypes himself up, truly believing he just beat the hardest boss phase of his life. The kid stares at his recovered loot with a totally unhinged look, celebrating that things are finally back to normal. But that crazy high makes the disciple pull a total rookie mistake, forgetting that the village has a ton of eyes. Instead of sticking to the dark alleys, the swordsman just casually strolled down the brightly lit main street. Drunk on that feeling of freedom, he just kept walking without a single ounce of stealth. The warrior jumped the sect walls feeling like an absolute boss, convinced his crime was flawless. But the kid didn't even notice that one of the sect elders was watching his every single move from a distance. Safe and sound back at Mount Hua, the late-night silence wraps around the main pavilion. Inside his room, Chingsang admires the sacred plaque glowing in his hands, which are literally stained with ketchup. Chilling on his bed, the assassin stretches his legs, feeling like he just dropped a massive load off his back. Convinced he made the 200 IQ play, he mutters that he just had to get the master's relic back. While promising to completely delete today's horrible memories from his brain, a sudden knock on the door gives him a heart attack. The young guy jumps out of bed terrified when he hears a deep voice calling his name from the hall. Stuttering, the debtor asks if it's his martial uncle, while the wooden door slowly creaks open. To his absolute horror, Elder Hunio is standing right there, looking incredibly suspicious. Noticing the kid up this late, the veteran asks why he's awake and gets fed a weak lie about extra training. With a cold, calculating stare, the man totally doesn't buy his martial nephew's garbage excuse. The elder takes heavy steps into the room, cranking up the tension to the max with every move. Looking him dead in the eye, Hunio drops the bomb that an entire inn down in the village got completely vaporized today. To make matters worse, he states as a fact that the damage was done using the plum blossom art. Hearing that direct accusation makes the kid's heart explode, gulping hard in absolute panic. Skipping the small talk, the veteran demands the young guy hold out his hands so he can inspect them up close. Dropping some veteran knowledge, the man points out that swinging a sword always leaves obvious marks on your body. Cold sweat drips down the disciple's face, freezing up as he realizes he's completely cornered. Shaking uncontrollably, the assassin slowly raises his hand, feeling pure terror totally consume his soul. The master's face gets even harder, officially confirming his absolute worst fears about the sex prodigy. In a move of pure insanity, Chingsang draws his blade and fiercely attacks his own martial uncle. Screaming like a cornered animal, the kid tries to permanently silence the only witness to his brutal crime. Boiling with rage, the veteran blocks the cheap shot and yells, demanding to know why the kid did something so evil. Knocked back by the parry, the kid backs up trying to play dumb, but the elder is absolutely not buying the act. Not letting up, the elder reveals he literally saw his nephew walking back from the village with a smile on his face. The memory of the kid casually doing parkour on the roofs instantly destroys any chance of denying it. Completely disgusted, Hunio admits he's ashamed to even call someone who unalived innocent people his student. Hearing the weight of those words completely shatters the young swordsman's fighting stance. Out of energy to keep up the lie, his legs give out and he crashes hard onto the wooden floor. Bowing at his master's feet, the debtor breaks down in tears and admits he totally crossed the line. Consumed by panic, he yells his confession, saying this whole nightmare started because of gambling. The kid breaks down the vicious cycle of short wins and massive LS that totally bankrupted him at the casino. The absolute madness of betting his sex treasure gets exposed as he tries to explain his epic downfall. Soon enough, the guy mentions the duo of outsiders who spawned out of nowhere pushing easy loans. The mental image of the manager with the creepy eyes haunts the ruined disciple's confession. Sobbing heavily, the assassin swears he wanted to pay the cash back, but his panic to get the plaque back just took over. The veteran claps back in disgust, asking if the idiot seriously thought deleting the creditors would cancel a debt. That harsh reality check hits the kid like a lightning bolt, making him realize the absolute scale of his stupidity. Smacking his head against the floor until it bleeds, Chingsang begs for forgiveness and says he'll take whatever punishment. Staring at the mess, Elder Hunio keeps an incredibly heavy and dark look on his face. Completely defeated, the young swordsman stays glued to the wooden floor, crying a river. Breaking the room's tense silence, the veteran coldly orders the kid to get up. Startled, Chingsang lifts his bruised face and stutters his martial uncle's title. Letting out a massive sigh, the man looks away, obviously incredibly disappointed by this entire disaster. But then the master's expression hardens, showing he's already made the final call on this mess. Very firmly, he claims he can't let one of Mount Hua's biggest prodigies get his life ruined over this. To the disciple's absolute shock, the elder announces he's going to sweep this crime under the rug just this once. Hearing that, the kid totally freezes up while tears keep streaming down his face. Super emotional, he just mumbles his martial uncle's name one more time. The veteran makes sure to clarify that wiping out innocent regular people is still totally unacceptable. But he justifies the cover-up by saying the sect's reputation serves a way bigger purpose. A drop of cold sweat slides down the kid's chin, marking his instant relief after all that stress. With his heart racing, the debtor cries out of pure gratitude hearing those literal lifesaver words. Still on his knees, he says thank you on repeat for the unbelievable carry he just got. Trying to de-escalate the vibe, the veteran takes a deep breath while the young guy keeps sobbing. Curious about the lore, he asks exactly who the people the kid eliminated in the village were. Hunhyo mentions the loan sharks didn't deserve to get packed up, promising to drop some prayers for them. Calming down, the swordsman says he didn't catch their names, but they were from the Continental Bank. Facing the other way, the elder listens to that response in absolute dead silence. In the blink of an eye, the man turns around in a total panic and demands the guy's actual name. Moving with scary speed, he grabs his nephew by the collar incredibly hard. Spooked by the sudden aggro, Chingsang asks what the big deal is with that info. With his face hidden in the shadows, the master tells the kid to repeat exactly what he just said. Stuttering from the nerves, the disciple confirms the bank's name again. The sweat starts dripping down the kid's face again, noticing the absolute terror in the older guy's eyes. The elder's hands start shaking violently while he grips the kid's clothes. Totally clueless, the debtor feels the insane pressure of the moment and freezes up in fear. In total shock, Hunhyo asks if he's absolutely sure, screaming at him to drop the guy's name. Feeling the heat, the assassin swears the outsider introduced himself as Manager Kim. The second he hears that name, the veteran's face twists into a look of absolute, unadulterated horror. Far away from there, another Mount Hua pavilion is chilling peacefully under the moonlight. But the silence is instantly shattered by frantic footsteps sprinting across the wooden courtyard. Riding calmly, the sect leader notices someone rushing to his door like an absolute maniac. Busting the door wide open, Hunhyo pops up screaming for the leader at the top of his lungs. Keeping his cool, Hyunjung asks what's with all the drama in the middle of the night. Sliding across the floor, the elder yells they have a massive problem, but gets scolded to keep his dignity intact. Brush in hand, the master stays focused on his calligraphy and drops a quote about keeping calm. Super zen, he explains that the tip of the sword and the brush should never waver. Cutting off the life lesson, the martial nephew screams in pure panic that the Continental Bank just showed up. From the massive jump scare, the leader's brush literally tears the paper, splashing black ink absolutely everywhere. The news hits so hard that Hyunjung completely loses his balance and falls straight backward instantly. Throwing out all the dignity he just preached about, the Grandmaster rolls across the floor in absolute panic. Pale as a ghost, the sect leader stares into the void, totally shook to his core by the reveal.